Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and it's time for my report on another day in India. And as you can see, I'm on the train today, and indeed, that is the story of today. So I woke up very early this morning and got in a bit of a panic actually. In fact, I'm going to start again. So I woke up early this morning because I had to, but I hadn't managed to get off to sleep late last night. So I only had about 4 hours sleep. So I was knackered, and I got in a real panic because I couldn't find my passport anywhere. And a couple of years back I lost my passport in Serbia, and it was horrendous. I thought, oh, I don't want that experience again. And it wasn't in all the normal places. And so I went to the railway station on this tuk-tuk thinking, oh my god, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to go to the police in Haridwar and all that. But actually, when I got on the station, I rooted around in my bag, I did find it. So I was like, praise the Lord, I'm okay. And that kind of put me on top of the world. That made me feel pretty damn good. And I went to my train and got an omelette on the station. So the guy made a little omelette, and quite weirdly, he got pieces of bread, fried those and put them in the middle of the omelette. Never come across that one before, but it was quite tasty, and I had a little cup of tea, and that perked me up a bit. And there I was. Oh, and on the station I met a lovely man, Mr. Gupta, and his son, and he's an English teacher and also a German teacher. He used to be a tour guide in Varanasi, and they were heading up, I'm quite sure where they're heading, but up on this train somewhere. And we had a really good chat, and then I got on the train and shared it with this lovely man, a gentleman probably in his 50s or 60s, the really kindest, nicest old man I've ever come across. He was really lovely, and I'm trying to remember his name. He told me twice, and it was P.S. something, but I can't remember. But he was lovely. So I had good company, and I set off on this train journey, and I'm still on it. And so we set off at 8:20 in the morning. It's now about 5 o'clock, and I am due to be on this train all night. And then, well, I say all night, getting in about 2 or 3 in the morning. So yeah, it's a long one. It's a long slog, and it's not a particularly fast one, as you can see. We're not exactly rollicking along. This is not the Vande Bharat Express at all. It's more of a local stopper service, but it is the only one going out. I'm actually now going through the city of Lucknow, which is one I quite fancied visiting, and you know, it was one of my maybe I'll stop there sometime on my trip. Lucknow, I remember vaguely, when I was a kid, we had a book called Our Island Story, which was like a history of Britain, but written in the colonial period, and there was a lot of like tales of daring do from the Empire. And I'm pretty sure there was a story about the Indian mutiny that took place in Lucknow. And of course that was taught to every school child back then. And these days it's all completely forgotten about. But my local friends have told me that there is a lot of British era history there, and also Mughal era history. So yeah, that's a good place to eat non-veg food. So there we are. Look now, anyway. So I guess this is a good place because I'm not doing anything else but train travel today, to actually talk about travelling on trains in India, which is both wonderful and very, very frustrating. The frustrating thing is booking tickets, because they have this very Byzantine system that seems invented by Kafka, where you can't just like get tickets. The tickets are maybe reserved but not confirmed. So one of my problems was getting out of Varanasi is I could get lots of tickets on a variety of trains, but none of them would be confirmed tickets. Well, that's not a lot of use. So I guess the idea is if someone drops out, you get their place. But that's, yeah, not very helpful at all, really. And so you normally have to book up 2 or 3 days in advance. And I remember it was a problem last time, but not as much as this. And it used to be a problem on Chinese trains too. Chinese trains are a real nightmare for booking. but they seem to have got a lot better. That said, the Indians are investing in their rail network. I've been on 2 of the Vande Bharat expresses, which are kind of Western in standard. I mean, I don't find them that exciting. By British standards, they're not that fast, although you do get a bit more space in them. Yeah, that's that. The sleeper trains are the ones I've been most commonly travelling on, and I guess my criticism of the sleeper trains, they try and shove too many people in. So literally, in a booth there are 8 people, because there are 3 bunks on one side, 3 bunks on the other, and then across the aisle there are 2 against the window. And that's the most I've ever seen crammed in anywhere. Right? In China there used to be 3 on each side, I remember that. Soviet Union it was 2, and most European ones was 2. The reason is that Indian trains run on wider tracks, so I don't know if you can see there, but they're about 5.5 foot. Now the British tracks are what is called the international standard gauge. That's 4 foot 8.5. Quite how they settled on that very precise number I don't know, but there is an urban myth going around about it's the size of a horse's arse, but to be honest, that's been disproved. But anyway, and that was Stevenson's gauge, and so that's what they settled on in Britain, because Brunel advocated a broad gauge, which was meant to be better, and all the Great Western network had to be ripped up and relaid when standard gauge was introduced. But in India, the standard gauge is much wider, because there are some narrow gauge trains here, famous ones, Darjeeling and Shimla, they call them the through trains, but they are the exception as to the rule. I mean, different countries do have different gauge tracks. So Japan is famously narrower than the UK, and it, you know, it's about, I think it's about 3.5 foot or 4 foot, something like that. And so their trains
enjoying the journey.
Yeah, their trains are inside quite similar to British trains, because as well as the track gauge, there's something called a loading gauge. And so the track gauge is how wide the track is, but the loading gauge is essentially how fat the train is. So British trains run on the same track as European trains, but European trains are fatter. They're much wider carriages, which is why they always seem to be a bit roomier inside. Now, the reason those trains don't run in Britain is they wouldn't fit through the bridges. They'd get stuck. Because the exception being the Eurostar, which was built to European specifications. Japanese trains are pretty similar loading gauge, so they're about as fat as European trains, but their track is narrower. Although their Shinkansens, their bullet trains, are actually standard gauge track, and I think they're European loading gauge. Apparently the Americans have the biggest loading gauge of them all, which they have much fatter trains. Don't know what that says, but the best trains I've been on are those in the former Soviet Union, where they have the widest track going. It's 6 foot something, and it's they have huge wide trains. But what's nice, they don't try and cram too many people into them. So Soviet trains are the height of luxury. You have 4 people in a compartment, and at the end of every coach there is an attendant. And they also, there's a boiler for tea, so there's an endless supply of tea. Indian trains don't seem to have many attendants on them, but what you do get is often at larger stations, you'll get people coming on and trying to sell food, so like biryani, that kind of stuff. And there's always a couple of guys wandering up and down selling little thimbleful mugs of tea or coffee. So that's part of the experience. And of course, like with anywhere, it's about talking to people and meeting people, and that's what I've done on this trip. So there was that nice gentleman who got off at Lucknow. He dealt in tea, apparently. He was like tea wholesaler, and then there's the chap and his son who were on the train, and they came along late, and we had a really good chat. And it was interesting because he'd done his PhD on Hermann Hesse, the German author. And by chance, I bought a Herman Hesse novel yesterday, and I started reading it last night, and I couldn't sleep. So what were the chances of that? And so he had a little bit of a chat to me about that novel, and also about his time he'd lived in Oman for a while, basically guiding German tourists around on cruise ships. And of course I've been to Oman, so we had a chat about that. And then his son's very into games. He's very good at chess, which I'm not. I can play it, but I taught him backgammon, which he really liked, and then he taught me how to play Uno. And that's one of the great things with sleeper trains, is you have that time where you can bond with people, total strangers who you're just thrust together with for a few hours of life, and you can and playing games is great. So when I travelled across Asia with my friend Tom van den Ouden, we played a 100-game series of backgammon, and I still have the little trophy at home. It's called the Long March competition, because we played it largely in China. I mean, what is interesting as well is with this network, because last year I went to Pakistan, as you know, and of course Pakistan was the same network. It was the same Indian Empire network, but the Pakistanis have done nothing with it since. I mean, I think they've bought new engines, coaches sometime in the 1970s, but that's about it. Even the signalling is still British semaphore signalling. Whereas the Indians have updated their system a lot, so a lot of stations have been rebuilt. Not always that architecturally exciting, but they do the job. And there's also they've electrified almost the whole network, which is pretty impressive. And I mean, these coaches that I'm in, they're not that old. They're quite nice, really. I mean, the toilets are not completely disgusting, which they often can be on sleeper trains, and they're not that bad at all, really. Whereas, you know, the Pakistani train, I liked it because it was quaint and old-fashioned, but they were filthy. I mean, and very, very slow. And these are a lot more of a functioning network. I mean, the Indian Railway employ over 1 million people, and they are the lifeblood of India. You can't say that about the Pakistani Railways. Not that many people travel by train in Pakistan, which is a shame, because it should be. And it was interesting, I was looking at GDP figures, because obviously, you know, they all started off from more or less the same place. But India, I think, is about, per capita, about $2,600. Pakistan's 1,400. Bangladesh, though, interestingly, is about 2,600 as well. It's almost on par with India. So I think that's quite interesting. Although, apart from the infrastructure stuff, you don't notice that much of a difference between the general amount of slums and stuff between India and Pakistan. It's more, I don't know, but you don't see the wealth. I mean, India is beginning to take off, but it's not shared out very well. But the infrastructure is much better here. It's, you know, bridges, motorways, that kind of stuff. And railways they have invested in and are continuing to invest in, and that's good. And hopefully they'll get enough one time where you don't need to book 3 or 4 days ahead to make a journey. Again, which is what China did. So that's that. Anything else to talk about the trains? Not really. The stations. So the thing is with trains here, you know, going into geek territory, in Europe, most trains are what you would call multiple units, where you have an engine at one end, an engine at the other, and it can go in and out. These are more traditional trains. There was always a locomotive at one end, and then carriages, and then a kind of guardsman at the end, which is how trains used to be in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. I much prefer that. I like rail enthusiasts prefer things that way. They're a nice traditional train, but they're also huge. I mean, apart from the Van der Barat ones, which are only 8 coaches long, a lot of these, there's about 20 coaches in the train. The stations are incredibly long. I mean, most have 3 footbridges because it would be so far to walk down the platform from, you know, one or the other footbridges. And, you know, on each platform in the major stations, about 4 or 5 snack places. That's on each platform, not as well as the main building. So they're really good places to just catch life. Although there's normally lots of people sleeping on them, you know, whether that's permanently or just waiting for a train, I don't know. So that's that. That's my experience. I don't expect to report much more from today, except that I'm going to travel and travel and travel and travel, and then sleep. Ooh, we're off again. Uncle Travelling Mountain. Keep travelling. What I didn't mention actually was a lot of the countryside's really boring. Like literally, I'm going on the Ganges Plain. It's all flat. It's scruffy villages. There's no mountains. There's a few big river bridges. And when I came last time through Punjab and even the bit of Rajasthan I was in, it was all pretty dull scenery. I'd like to go on some scenic Indian trains. I don't think that'll be this trip though. Keep travelling.